Rather than banning landlords from having the ability to look at credit scores and credit history of tenants, the focus should be on helping tenants fix their credit. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have an interesting topic for you today, and it has to do with tenants and their credit scores and how a lot of municipalities out there right now are trying to ban landlords from even looking at the tenant's credit history. Now, I think this is an awful idea. Obviously, we need every tool possible in order to screen our tenants and put the best tenants in our units possible, because this is our investment. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars buying properties, fixing them up, making them nice, and I do not want to put a tenant into my property who is going to treat it like it's a piece of garbage, going to rip the place apart, not pay me rent, and then I'm going to have to take that sort of loss. So when these municipalities say, hey, we want to ban landlords from looking at that credit history, I 100% disagree with that. We need the ability to look not just at the credit history and the credit score, but I want to make sure that the tenant actually has an income that would provide enough money to pay the rent. I want to make sure this person has a good rental history as well. Doesn't have any evictions on their record, doesn't have any eviction filings on their record. Because when I see an eviction filing, that tells me that this person has a history of paying their rent late. And if they have problems with their previous landlords, they're probably going to have a problem with me. And I don't want that. So the solution to this problem, and this is what a lot of people, they don't want to talk about the actual solution. The solution is helping tenants improve their credit. Okay? And I believe strongly in financial literacy. I believe strongly in getting your money working correctly. That means paying off your debts, fixing all those past due debts that you have, and paying off your previous creditors the money that you owe them in order to bring your credit score up. Now, obviously, that is going to be a very difficult thing to do for a lot of especially lower income tenants, but it is not impossible. I recommend the Dave Ramsey 12-step program. I'm sorry, not the 12-step. That's the alcoholism thing. The 7 steps, the baby steps. So the Dave Ramsey 7 steps, and that's, building an emergency fund that is paying off all your debts from the lowest all the way up to the highest, creating an emergency reserve of, 6 months, starting to save and invest for, the future, 15% of all of your income, buying a house, these things are important. Okay. I followed Dave Ramsey's program and I was able to get out of debt. I had horrible debt too. Okay. And these tenants, they need help. And unfortunately, the information out there right now, it's just keeping them in this system of poverty where they have these super low credit scores. It's not helping them. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think, okay? Do you think it's a good idea to try to, fix or help these tenants fix their credit scores rather than trying to ban landlords from looking at them, okay? Why do they want to hurt us and help them? That doesn't make any sense to me. It's not going to help them if they end up owing me even more money. They're going to have another debt collector coming after them, and that's not a good thing. So anyway, let's get into this article. This article is coming from Forbes.com, and it says, improving credit scores for rental housing, not banning them, is the answer. Yeah, and like I said, I 100% agree with what this article is saying, and we should be trying to help people fix their credits. That is the true solution to these problems, okay? Maybe we can even move some of these people into home ownership. But anyway, let's get into this article and see what it says. Across the country, worries about how and why people are failing to qualify for rental housing are growing. Activists claiming to look out for the best interests of prospective residents of rental housing have sought to ban criminal background checks, previous eviction records, and credit scores as part of the risk assessment used by housing providers to screen tenants. In Minneapolis, for example, the city council imposed limits on the use of credit scores. The council member supporting the intervention said the rising prices and home scarcity put some urgency to support people who are the most vulnerable renters, But is limiting or banning checks on credit the best way to help people with thin, bad, or no credit? And the answer, of course, is no, okay? Banning credit checks is not going to help these people. Imagine if you told the credit card company, you know what, credit card company, we're not going to allow you to check the credit of the people who get the credit cards anymore. Well, a lot of people who are not just bad with their finances, but actual scammers will come up, they will get a credit card, they will charge the thing up with no intentions of ever paying for it. The losses would be exponential. Yet in this situation with your house, that is exactly what they want landlords to do. They want you to have no ability to do any sort of tenant screening and then, just take the losses. Like every landlord out there is super wealthy and can afford to pay for people to live in their units for free. And that's just not the case, okay? How many times do I have to say that the grand majority of landlords are small landlords and the majority of landlords own less than 4 properties, okay? Less than 4, okay? So if most landlords are small landlords, then you're only hurting those small landlords by passing stupid legislation like they are trying to do up in Minneapolis. A recent report from the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau might add fuel to the fire. The report, awkwardly titled, "Tenant Background Checks Market," inventories every conceivable grievance with risk assessment by housing providers. Here's my favorite one about eviction data. Collecting this data, particularly civil and criminal public records data, and correctly matching the collected data to an individual prospective tenant can be challenging. For example, according to one study of 3.6 million eviction court records, 22% of state eviction cases are ambiguous or false records. As a result, the data reported in tenant screening reports and relied on in generating the proprietary tenant risk scores are often ambiguous or out of date and can be erroneous. This made me laugh out loud because an entire industry has developed claiming that the country is facing an eviction crisis or epidemic. This demonstrably false. And one reason it's easy to reach that conclusion is exactly because there is no clear or consistent data on evictions. In today's world, it is impossible to make any statement about eviction, defined as actual removal by force from a rental property, is exceedingly rare. After filing, most evictions result in dismissal or ambiguous outcomes. Only a small number result in law enforcement appearing to haul things out of an apartment. Still, aggressive advocates want it both ways. Data indicate a crisis, but the data is bad. Don't use it for screening. Yeah, and that is a very good point, okay? A lot of eviction filings do not end with the case actually leading to eviction because you're able to work it out that the tenant will actually just leave on their own or some other resolution was made, but that doesn't mean that the initial problem, which in most cases is non-payment of rent, that doesn't mean that initial problem wasn't there. The issue is that I want to know, as a landlord, when I'm screening my tenants, I want to know if this tenant has had these sort of problems before. Did they give their last landlord a lot of grief? Are they going to be paying me on time, or do they think that rent is the last thing that they should pay and they would rather, pay their phone bill first? Okay, that's something important for me to know because this is my investment. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on each house, each property that I own. And I do not want someone in there, living for free while I'm paying all of their bills. I'm subsidizing their living. I don't give a crap if you had some sort of life circumstance or, a bad run of bad luck. That doesn't mean anything to me, okay? I'm running a business and my priority is making sure that I make my profit. I'm able to pay my bills. And if I'm not able to do that, then I do not want you in my property. The litany at the opening of the report might accurately reflect the frustration about consumers having to expose themselves to risk assessment, but renting housing is not an entitlement and not a right by any definition. I'd add a yet to that, since this is exactly what advocates claim, that indeed it is any person's right to demand access to private property to live in, regardless of risk profile. Yeah, and that is, what this author is saying is true. That is what they want. They want to make it so that you, having housing is a right, so much so that it trumps property rights, okay? Which means that, simply put, if they decide, hey, I want to live in your property, you cannot stop them. You cannot evict them, no matter if they pay or not. No matter what they do, you have to accept them, right? Well, here's the funny part about when you try to do something like that, right? You can still choose not to play the game. Okay, you could choose to say, well, I'm not going to own any rental properties in your ridiculous jurisdiction where you have these stupid rules. I'm going to go buy a rental property over there. Or if you already own some, well, I'm just going to sell my homes to owner occupants because I don't want to have to deal with it. In terms of large landlords, I'm going to convert all my units over to condos. Okay, we're not dealing with your nonsense. And that is what so many landlords have done as our property rights have been eroded and taken away from us. Okay? So, yeah, I agree with everything this author is saying. Some of us view housing as a commodity and renting it just like renting a car or any other item. Assessing risk makes rental housing possible, and without the ability to screen or review past performance, smaller, more affordable housing would disappear. The view that housing is a right and that any human being can take another person's property to have housing is a dangerous one and threatens to undermine private rental housing. It is worth having a hearty and rigorous debate about this. And yeah, that is a very dangerous thought, saying that any individual can take anyone else's property. And how far would it go? Okay, if we're talking about the homelessness issue, well, why not? Why are we allowing people to live in, if you're a single person, why are you in a 3-bedroom house by yourself? Maybe the government should step in and say, you have to allow homeless people to take these other 2 bedrooms in your house. I mean, if you're going to take away a landlord's property rights, why not take an individual homeowner's rights away? Right? And then you start to realize that, hey, that is what their goal is, right? They want a fully socialist system where the government decides who lives where, nobody owns any property, basically they take away all your rights. They put in this system of socialism, and what happens? We all become poorer, we have less freedoms, and we're all just miserable. Okay? I'm not for it. I will never support this socialist nonsense. Okay? And I do see housing as a commodity, just like a rental car. You pay to use a rental car for the allotted period of time, and when that period of time is up, you return the rental car and you pay me the money that you owe me. That's it. Okay? There's no special right to it. There's nothing. It is just a product that you are using. So, yeah, good article, and I definitely agree with everything that this author is saying.